a glass of champagne. My sister's wedding. She humiliated me in her toast. She told 200 guests that her own sister was unwanted, that no one would ever love a woman like me. My mother laughed and called me leftovers. My father hid his smile behind his napkin. Then the groom stood up, walked to the microphone, and the entire room went silent. What he said next changed everything. My name is Harper Lindquist. I am 31 years old, a trauma nurse at a hospital in Denver, Colorado, and a single mother to the sweetest 6-year-old boy in the world. 6 weeks ago, at my younger sister's wedding, in front of 200 guests, she took the microphone and told everyone that I was a cautionary tale, that I was unwanted, that I was, in her exact words, damaged goods. My mother added her own line from the head table. My father just laughed along with everyone else. My son, Wyatt, was sitting beside me the whole time, his small hand wrapped around mine, watching 200 adults laugh at his mother. But there was one person in that ballroom who didn't laugh. And what he did next is the reason I'm telling you this story tonight. I grew up in a 5-bedroom house on a quiet street in Boulder, Colorado. And from as far back as I can remember, there were 2 kinds of daughters in our family. The favorite and the afterthought. My sister, Delaney, was 4 years younger than me, golden-haired like our mother, with a laugh that made every adult in the room stop what they were doing and pay attention. I was the responsible one, which in our house was just a polite way of saying nobody needed to think about me, because I never gave anyone a reason to. When Delaney turned 16, our parents bought her a designer dress for her birthday party, the kind that cost more than a month of groceries. When I turned 16 2 years earlier, my mother told me plainly that I wasn't the type who needed anything fancy. That simple suited me better. I wore a dress from a clearance rack that I paid for myself with money I'd earned babysitting every weekend for a year. I still remember exactly how much it cost, because I counted out every dollar twice before I handed it to the cashier. Our bedrooms told the same story. Delaney had the big room with the window seat and the fairy lights strung across the ceiling. Mine was the small room at the end of the hallway, next to the laundry closet, furnished with whatever nobody else wanted anymore. I never hated my sister for any of it. She was a child benefiting from a system she didn't build. But some nights I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me, what I had done to make my own parents look straight through me like I wasn't in the room. I didn't know then that this exact pattern would follow me all the way to a ballroom. 20 years later, in front of 200 strangers, I met my ex-husband when I was 23. During my first year working nights in the emergency room, he was warm and funny and made me feel like the only person who mattered when he looked at me. We married the following year. At our own wedding, my parents spent most of the reception telling guests about Delaney's new internship at a marketing firm in Chicago. She's going to do something extraordinary with her life. My mother told anyone who would listen. Both my girls are doing fine. But Delaney is special. My marriage fell apart faster than I ever imagined it could. My husband had a talent for making me feel small, for questioning every decision I made, for slowly cutting me off from my friends until it was just the 2 of us and his moods. By the time I found out about the woman from his office, I was 7 months pregnant, and I barely recognized myself in the mirror. The divorce was finalized when Wyatt was just over a year old. I was 26, exhausted, working overnight shifts while my baby stayed at a daycare that charged by the hour, because that was all I could afford. When I told my mother, she sighed and said she always worried I didn't know how to hold on to a man, and that Delaney would never let something like that happen to her. My father said nothing at all. He never did. Delaney sent me one text message during the entire ordeal. "That's rough. But you always pick the wrong guys. Maybe try counseling." No offer to help. No question about how Wyatt was doing. Nothing. I told myself I didn't need their sympathy. I told myself that every night as I reheated leftovers after a 12-hour shift, with Wyatt asleep in his crib in our tiny one-bedroom apartment. I just wanted them to stop treating my life like a punchline. Then, about 2 years before the wedding, Delaney started dating a man named Nolan Ashford. She met him at a charity fundraiser for a children's advocacy organization. He was a family law attorney who spent half his career representing kids for free. Quiet, observant, with a habit of really listening when someone spoke to him. The first time I met him was at a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. He shook my hand, noticed Wyatt hiding shyly behind my legs, and immediately crouched down to his eye level. "Hey, buddy. I like your dinosaur shirt." "Is that a stegosaurus?" Wyatt lit up like a firework. Nobody else at that table had ever paid him that kind of attention. Throughout dinner, I noticed Nolan quietly watching the way my mother steered every conversation back to Delaney. The way my father laughed at every joke Delaney made but barely glanced at mine. The way I automatically stood up to clear the plates while my sister stayed seated, scrolling on her phone. Later, as I loaded Wyatt into my car, Nolan appeared beside me. "Does your family always treat you like that?" he asked quietly. I forced a laugh and told him that's just how things were. That Delaney was the star and I was the supporting cast. He didn't laugh back. "You're a good mother," he said. "That boy is lucky to have you." Then he walked back inside, and I sat in my car for a long moment, wondering why my eyes were stinging. The wedding invitation arrived in a cream envelope with gold lettering. Thick and formal, like a summons rather than an invitation. The venue was a restored vineyard estate outside of Napa Valley, the kind of place that had hosted celebrities and at least one senator's daughter. 200 guests, a budget somewhere north of $150,000. Paid for entirely by my parents. When I got married, my parents gave us $2,000 and mentioned it at every holiday for the next 3 years. 2 weeks before the wedding, Delaney called with a list of conditions. "Wear something neutral. Nothing that draws attention," she told me. And did I really have to bring Wyatt? Because he might get fussy and ruin the ceremony. When I told her I had no one else to watch him, she sighed and said fine. But keep him quiet. And we'd be seated at a table near the back so I could take him out quickly if he made a scene. The morning of the wedding, my mother called to confirm that Wyatt and I would be at table 24, near the kitchen doors, and that I shouldn't make a fuss about it. Since this was Delaney's day and we couldn't have any distractions, I should have understood then exactly what was being set up. But I didn't. I just wanted to get through the day. The estate was stunning. Vaulted wooden ceilings, chandeliers dripping with crystal, white peonies cascading down every table. I wore a simple charcoal dress I'd found on sale, exactly as instructed. Wyatt wore a tiny navy vest with his hair combed neatly to one side, clutching my hand as we walked in. "Mommy, it's so pretty," he whispered. Table 24 was exactly where they'd promised, tucked behind a support column, close enough to the kitchen that I could hear the staff shouting orders all evening. No one from my immediate family came over to say hello. I watched my parents work the room like they were running for office, hugging relatives, accepting compliments about their daughter, their one and only shining daughter. Delaney arrived 30 minutes later, in a gown that probably cost more than my annual rent, glowing under the string lights. Her eyes found me across the room, and she smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. On her way to the head table, she stopped by ours just long enough to remind me, again, to keep Wyatt quiet. During the family photos, my mother appeared with a tight smile and told me this round was for immediate family only, parents of the bride, and that I understood. Didn't I? I understood. I always understood. Wyatt tugged my sleeve and asked why we couldn't be in the picture too. And I told him we'd take our own photos later, and held up my phone and smiled for him instead. At the reception, I watched aunts, uncles, and cousins I had known my whole life walk right past our table to greet the head table. Not one of them stopped to say hello to us. I noticed a young man setting up his phone on a small tripod near the edge of the dance floor, angled toward the stage, likely live streaming for relatives who couldn't make the trip. I had no idea that phone would become the most important witness in the room. When the toasts began, Delaney rose from her seat, radiant under the lights, and took the microphone with the ease of someone who had practiced in front of a mirror. She thanked our parents, thanked her guests, and then her tone shifted. She said she wanted to talk about family, about lessons she'd learned by watching people close to her. Her eyes landed on me, and the warmth drained out of her expression. "Harper, could you stand up?" she said into the microphone. "I want everyone to see you." 200 faces turned toward our corner table. My legs felt like they were filled with wet sand. But I stood. "My sister is a single mother," she announced, her voice light and amused, like she was telling a joke at a dinner party. She got married young, had a baby, and then, well, things didn't work out for her. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. "She's unwanted now," Delaney continued. "I mean, can you blame the men who left? She's got baggage. A kid." That whole situation, the laughter grew bolder. From the head table, my mother's voice rang out clear as a bell. "She's used goods." Honestly, the whole room laughed. My mother laughed. My father covered his mouth, his shoulders shaking with barely contained amusement. I looked down at Wyatt. His small face had crumpled with confusion, his eyes darting between me and the laughing crowd. "Mommy, why is everyone laughing at you?" he asked, his voice tiny and frightened. I couldn't answer him. My throat had closed completely. Delaney wasn't finished. She raised her glass and toasted to me, her cautionary tale, the reason she knew exactly what not to do with her own life. The guests raised their glasses back. Some were still laughing. A few looked uncomfortable but said nothing at all. And my 6-year-old son sat there and watched his mother become the punchline of his aunt's wedding speech. Then, from the head table, I saw movement. Nolan pushed his chair back. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on Wyatt's small, trembling shoulders pressed against my side. For one terrible second, I thought he was about to walk out on his own wedding. Instead, he walked straight toward the stage, toward the microphone, toward my sister. The laughter died instantly. The string quartet stopped playing. Nobody in that ballroom knew what was about to happen, including me. "Delaney, baby, what are you doing?" my sister said, her smile flickering. Nolan didn't answer her. He reached the stage, and gently, without force, took the microphone out of her hand. 200 people held their breath. Then he turned to look directly at me and said, quietly but clearly, "Look at me, Harper. Not through me. At me." Then he faced the crowd. "I have spent 2 years watching how this family treats Harper," he said. 2 years of dinners where she's invisible. 2 years of holidays where she's not welcome. 2 years of watching the people who are supposed to love her most treat her like she's less than nothing. Delaney grabbed at his arm, telling him to stop, that he was embarrassing her. He stepped away from her hand. "No," he said. "You did that yourself. I'm a family attorney," he continued, his voice carrying across the silent room. "I've spent my career protecting children from exactly this kind of damage." He pointed toward our table, toward Wyatt, still shaking against my side. "That little boy is 6 years old. And you just made him watch 200 adults laugh at his mother. You called her unwanted. You called her used goods. In front of her own child." Absolute silence. My mother's face had gone white. My father was staring hard at his plate. I have spent my entire career fighting against exactly this kind of cruelty, Nolan said, and I cannot marry into it. He turned to face Delaney directly. I can't marry you. I won't. The gasp from 200 guests was audible. One more thing, he added, glancing toward the tripod still recording at the edge of the dance floor. My cousin has been live streaming this reception for family who couldn't be here tonight. Roughly 60 people just watched exactly what kind of family I almost married into. He set the microphone down gently on the stage. I'm sorry for the disruption, he told the stunned room. The bar is still open. Please, enjoy your evening. Then he walked off the stage and out of the ballroom. Everything after that happened fast. My mother was on her feet, storming toward our table. Her face twisted, not with shame, but with rage, directed entirely at me. What did you do? She hissed. What did you say to him? I didn't do anything. I told her. Delaney stood up, called me a liar in front of everyone. Said I'd been trying to turn Nolan against her since the day I met him. I felt the story rewriting itself in real time. The sympathy in the room shifting away from me and toward my sister. The sobbing bride. In a matter of minutes, I had gone from victim to villain in front of 200 witnesses. I looked down at Wyatt's tear-streaked face, and something inside me went very still and very clear. I stood up, smoothed down my dress, and lifted my son into my arms. He has eyes, I said quietly. He has watched you treat me like nothing for 2 years. And tonight he finally decided he couldn't be part of it anymore. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, my back straight, Wyatt's wet cheek pressed against mine. Behind me, my mother screamed at me to come back and apologize to my sister. I didn't turn around. Near the doors, Nolan was waiting, not fleeing, waiting. I'm sorry, he told me quietly. I should have said something years ago. Don't apologize, I told him. You just saved my son from watching his mother be humiliated without anyone stepping in. That's more than my own family has ever done for me. He handed me his business card and told me that if I ever needed legal help, for anything at all, to call him. No charge. He meant it. That night, once Wyatt was bathed and tucked in with his stuffed dinosaur, I sat on the edge of my bed and watched my phone fill with missed calls. 31 from my mother, 12 from Delaney, 4 from my father. I scrolled through messages calling me selfish, calling me jealous, telling me I had destroyed my sister's life. Then I found one message that was different. It was from my Aunt Robin, my mother's younger sister. The only person who had approached our table that entire night. I watched the stream. She wrote, Harper, I am so sorry. I had no idea they were capable of something like this. You didn't do anything wrong. I read it 3 times. It was the first time in my entire life that anyone in my family had told me, plainly, that what had happened to me was wrong. Not something I had provoked. Not something I deserved. Wrong. I cried harder reading those 2 sentences than I had cried through the entire wedding. The next morning, my best friend from nursing school sent me a set of screenshots from a family group chat I'd been quietly removed from 6 months earlier. After I asked why I hadn't been invited to Thanksgiving, the messages were dated 2 weeks before the wedding. Delaney writing that she planned to call me out in front of everyone. My mother telling her to keep it funny. That people love a good roast. My father asking only that they not mention his name. It hadn't been a slip of the tongue. It had been planned. Rehearsed. Approved by everyone at that head table. I sat with those screenshots for a long time while Wyatt slept beside me on the couch. Then I opened a blank note on my phone and typed 2 words. No contact. No dramatic confrontation. No demand for an apology. No attempt to make them understand what they'd done. I would simply stop showing up to be ignored. I blocked my mother's number. Then my sister's. Then my father's. They showed up at my apartment 3 days later. My mother in a cashmere coat. My father looking like he'd taken a wrong turn into an unfamiliar neighborhood. You blocked us, my mother said, her voice trembling with outrage. After everything you did to your sister. I told her plainly that Delaney had called me unwanted in front of 200 people. That she had called me used goods. And that Nolan had made his own decision based on what he witnessed with his own eyes. My mother pressed on about the venue costs. About how much money I had cost the family. And I felt something in me that had been bent for 31 years, finally straighten out completely. I told her I loved her. And that I had spent my whole life hoping she would love me back in a way that didn't hurt. But I was done waiting. I would not raise my son in a family where cruelty was acceptable, as long as it came wrapped in blood relation. When she reached for Wyatt, I stepped between them. He's my son, I told her, and I decide who has access to him. Then I closed the door. 6 months have passed since that night. I was promoted to charge nurse in my emergency department, the youngest one in the hospital's history. Wyatt started first grade and made 2 best friends within the first week. A boy who loves trucks, and a girl who loves the same dinosaurs he does. His teacher sent home a note calling him one of the kindest children in her class. I started therapy, unpacking 3 decades of being told, quietly and consistently, that I wasn't enough. My Aunt Robin drives up from Colorado Springs every other month to take Wyatt to the Science Museum and never once asks me to give my mother another chance. My mother has tried to reach me through relatives. Through cards with no return address. Through a $100 bill tucked inside a birthday card for Wyatt that I put straight into his college fund. My father sent one text message a few weeks ago. Just 3 words. I'm sorry. I read it. And I sat with it for a long time. And I haven't decided yet whether I'll answer. Healing isn't a straight line. And forgiveness was never a requirement for peace. Delaney's engagement ended completely. Nolan's family returned every gift with a note about irreconcilable differences in values. I heard through my aunt that she started seeing a therapist of her own. I hope she finds whatever she's looking for. That's not my story to carry anymore. Last week, Wyatt brought home a family tree assignment from school, while the other kids drew grandparents and cousins spread across the page. He drew 2 figures, a tall woman with brown hair, and a small boy holding her hand. That's our family. Mommy, he told me proudly. Just us. I hung it on the refrigerator at his eye level, where he can see it every morning. I used to believe that family meant enduring whatever treatment you were given, because that's what a good daughter does. I was wrong. Family is supposed to be the place where you're celebrated, not tolerated, where your presence is welcomed, not weaponized. My family was a performance, and I had spent 31 years playing the understudy in my own life. If you've ever had a parent who looked straight through you, a sibling who needed you to fail so they could feel like they'd succeeded, a family gathering that felt like walking into a minefield, I want you to know you are not alone, and you are not the problem they've made you out to be. Some of you are already walking away. Some of you are still working up the courage. And some of you are still hoping that if you just try a little harder, love a little better, make yourself a little smaller, they'll finally see you. They won't. Not because you aren't worth seeing, but because they never learned how, and that was never yours to fix. My son will grow up knowing that his worth was never measured by how much unkindness he could quietly absorb. He'll know that walking away from people who hurt you isn't weakness. It's the clearest form of strength there is. That's the only inheritance that ever mattered to me. Not a family name. Just a mother who finally chose herself. And chose him. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to set a boundary with someone you loved, or wondered if you were strong enough to walk away, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Thank you for listening.